Hi everyone, my name's Leonie Jennings and I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager in Projects and Change at Ember. This is the second piece in a new series highlighting innovative professionals across the technology projects, change and transformation space called Project Innovators. The goal to showcase the incredible talent within my network, shine a light on fresh ideas shaping the way we deliver projects, and share insights that are informative, inspiring, and practical. Today, I'm sitting down with Fatimah Abbouchi, Australia's first PMO influencer, founder and CEO of AMO, Agile Management Office, a consulting and advisory firm helping organisations of varying sizes and complexity to bridge gaps in their execution, achieving outcomes by aligning strategy, delivery, and operations. Fatima, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure.
We've known each other for many years now, since your ANZ days, and I've followed your journey over the years. So, my questions today are quite varied, as there are many aspects of your career and things you're passionate about that I wanted to touch on. So, let's jump in. I wanted to start with the human side of projects, mental health and sustainable change, because I know you've been involved with Beyond Blue and you're passionate about supporting mental health. You've spoken openly about mental health and resilience. How do you see well-being intersecting with project delivery?
It's really interesting because I've spent so much time, as you mentioned, in different organizations of different sizes and levels of maturity. And one of the things that's very obvious to me is that when these issues fail, it's often as a result of more than one thing. It's not just the delivery side of it, but also the people side of it, the change side of it as well. I think that when we think about some of the organizations we're working within and the complexities of some of the things that they need to deal with, if you are sensing or your teams are feeling burnt out or they're change fatigued, that sort of thing degrades decision quality, your ability to sense risks, your ability to judge stakeholder interactions, all these sorts of things. And interestingly, at the moment, I spent some time again recently in the Beyond Blue offices, and they were working with a cohort from NAB actually in a volunteer capacity to develop a new program that is related to helping people in the corporate space before before Blue. It's called Before Blue. And the reason for this is because they have statistics to say that mental health costs Australian workplaces $70 billion annually. And that number, since my time with them over the last 10 years, has continued to rise. So I feel like the more we care for our people, the more we can support our people, the more likely delivery itself will be successful. And removing the premise of delivery at all costs, because the short-term nature of that won't be helpful for the long-term impacts on people and teams. So I feel like the fact that Beyond Blue, as a good example, has brought this back up now. They're the ones that are doing the research and spending a lot of time in this space. They're clearly seeing that there is a need, and it's not just on the project side, but just in corporate in general.
It's really, really good. As someone I know personally who was a senior, very, very senior and experienced BA, was on a project and got so stressful and he had to have a mental health break because of that. And it's like, wow, it can happen to anyone. And I think, it's really something that we need to be aware of so that people don't get to that point and we can see what the triggers are potentially before it gets to breaking point, I guess. Yeah, that's great.
You're absolutely right. It's the before. It's seeing it as it showed up as risks initially, and then slowly but surely, the individuals themselves, me being someone who's been through burnout a few years ago, find that we get to a point where we don't have the resources. Resources could be people, it could be time, it could be capacity, decision making authority, it could be budget, it could be time away from work, all those sorts of things flip the balance and therefore then can lead us to feel burnt out. And that then leads to bigger and more broader problems for organizations overall and costs billions per annum as a result.
What do you see and what do you think that organizations can do better than to support project professionals in those high pressure environments?
Well, one of the things that's top of mind at the moment is there's lots of legislation passing for different reasons, but there was some recent updated laws around psychosocial
For sure.
hazards.
Yeah. Or that.
Yep, you would be very familiar with that. And so, obviously, as a small business, we spent some time refreshing our policies and procedures associated with that. But what that really helped me to, I guess, um, shine a light on
Mhm.
is we need to make well-being a governance input, not just the HR afterthought. We
Mm.
don't want to wait till someone's burnt out, or in my case, having experience working with people when I was running PMOs that had to take 6 months off leave because they were suffering through depression, as another example, or someone who used to work with me who was faced with a traumatic breast cancer diagnosis in their 20s, that needed ample flexibility. So I feel like organizations can do better by not confusing resilience with endurance, by, I guess, minimizing the hero culture, as sometimes we feel is evident, and actually helping organizations to develop a difference between availability and accountability, right? Just because you're available, it doesn't mean you're going to be productive. Rather, focus on accountability. You get the job done, however it is that you get the job done. And this is really topical because of all the return to work mandates and things like that. So I feel like it's um, it's giving opportunities for your team not to always be on, and actually being able to help provide opportunities for them to build that resilience that's necessary, and just showing a bit of grace when your team asks for support, and if they don't ask, just ask them if they're okay, and see how you can maybe help them, because you just don't know what's going on in someone's life day to day. You just can't see that from the outside.
Yeah, which leads to our next question very well. I mean, personally, how do you sustain your energy and passion while, I guess, leading a large scale change? And especially because I know that you're a mum of a young child. Yeah, how do you do it?
Well, I will say that my energy cycles like the seasons, and not the seasons in Melbourne, which is like 4 seasons in a day. But my number one, most important thing that I stress more than anything else is ruthless prioritization. Um, there's a lot of talk about balance and things like that, and I think that's really seeing how badly it's done in some corporate situations. Let's not talk about balance, but ruthless prioritization,
Mhm.
and that is also based on the energy that I have in a certain day, a week, or month. As an example, we recently had to put down one of our dogs, and so my energy level last week was almost non-existent. As a result, I had to adjust adjust for the circumstances, because things like this happen in life.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that. Two of my own pictures, so I know how hard that is. Um, so I wanted to talk about the evolution of the PMO, I guess, and talk to you about how PMOs are changing from rigid governance structures to maybe more adaptive, value-driven functions. Um, I mean, you've been named Australia's first PMO Influencer of the Year. In your view, how is the PMO evolving in today's agile and AI-driven business landscape?
It's really interesting because this is some really good data that's come off the back of hosting the PMO Leaders Global Annual Conference, which we did in October. And from that, we brought together dozens and dozens of professionals, transformation delivery PMOs from around the world. And so my not only my own observations, but actually hearing and seeing from them from all regions, all countries, has really given me a really good view on what's happening in the landscape. And something that I'm seeing more and more of is PMOs themselves are starting to really focus on understanding the patterns, making sense of patterns that are happening in an organization.
Mhm.
They're understanding the importance of prioritization so they can balance their resources and the
Mm.
capacity better. The the PMOs that are doing a really good job, but also adapting what they do from a governance perspective so that they're not fixated every time delivery decides to change their ways of working. They're focusing on how to balance the flow of work, not only within the PMO, but actually into delivery and then into outside to stakeholders as well and customers. So they're sort of acting as that conduit that's sitting in between um, your customers and delivery, and really adapting in real time what they are doing depending on the needs of the organization. So I feel like they're ruthlessly prioritizing initiatives. They're getting more, they're getting better and better at that, which means they're getting a lot more trust. They are finding ways to leverage AI that maybe hadn't really been considered previously. They're experimenting with it, even with your basic tools, plugins to Microsoft Teams and others, and they're really finding that the part that they play that is of utmost importance is the judgment on the data and the information that they're starting to see more of. So moving from just complying and governance to actually decision enablement, which is exactly what executives have always wanted. And we're really helping them to see that as well.
Awesome. What do you think then the biggest misconception organizations still have about PMOs?
I think the number one that continues to make the rounds is the fact that your PMO will be successful without an accountable executive who's backing you, supporting you, sponsoring you. That remains completely on the hook. Too many PMOs are segregated away from delivery, or where they're intertwined, there isn't a senior enough executive that is there to back and support. And I call them the accountable executive. And without that, there's just there's no real delivery of value, because the value will be only constrained to your team and maybe some of the people that you support. So I think that is probably the number one that just consistently is true. And part of it is because in some organizations, the PMO, depending where it sits, may be too low level for, say, maybe a C-level executive. And so therefore they don't really think about it too much. But the problem is, if your PMO operates well, they're going to drive so much better outcomes for your delivery, and then you'll be able to respond to and stand up to the board and about progress and what you're delivering, and making sure that you're protecting that value. So definitely the accountable executive for me is by far the biggest misnomer at
Yeah,
the moment.
I've definitely seen that in play as well. Um, how does the AMO way then help bridge the gap between sort of strategy, delivery, and operations in a practical sense?
So the AMO way came into my mind really about 10 years ago, which is why I started Agile Management Office. Um, and I realized I was actually working in one of the big four banks for, I think, the fourth time in my career. And I just found that there was a consistent disconnect between what we were doing at the time when I was working in the delivery of PMO space to what the executives were talking about when it comes to strategy. And the biggest gap for me was not the strategy and delivery part, because often they came together and there's lots of people that focus on strategy, delivery, or both. But the neglected aspect was the operations. Operations, BAU, business as usual, call it what you will. So strategy defines the why, delivery defines the how. It's the operations that defined whether it sticks, and the embedding and enablement of the change or changes into operations that really makes or breaks whether you can say that your project or program you deliver is successful.
Wow.
So the AMO Way's goal to connect those three does it in a way that uses capability led rather than just project led delivery. It has an adaptive governance model at its heart, which pivots based on maturity and risk and scale and all these sorts of things. And then our outcomes are not at the end of a project, but actually go far beyond into BAU. And those three elements, strategy, delivery, and operations, bringing them together in a way that I feel is quite important, has helped us to realize significant benefit for customers, and really hone in on helping them to translate strategy into delivery, and then the handover into operations. And those three things just worked so well together. And that's why AMO Way basically exists today.
Mm, nice. Um, if you could redesign the concept of the PMO from scratch, what would it look
How
like?
long do we have?
Not that long.
Uh, so I think the one thing I would say is I would make it a mandate that you develop out your PMO or co-design your PMO with those that are going to be the beneficiaries of what you're putting in place. That's number one. I would also make sure, and I experienced this firsthand, that it's tailored to your industry, your organization, every single industry, organization, maturity, even the experiences of those within a team who some may have had bad experiences with PMOs, and you've got to shake that off if you want to do a good job. I would use the principles of the AMO way to align strategy, delivery, and operation, not just strategy, not just delivery. So operations comes in. I would make the governance model adaptive, and I would make sure that there was an executive accountability embedded in. Otherwise, I wouldn't let a PMO exist without it. Those are probably the core things which you briefly touched on. And I think that is
Mhm.
really important to remember that if you don't see, often the PMOs that are working the best are invisible and they're behind the scenes. It's when things aren't going well and delivery teams are complaining that you often find the problem. So by bringing them in and co-designing every single PMO with them, they're more likely to make it stick and make the change embedded long term.
Makes sense. Yeah. You've built a very strong voice in the project community. What advice would you give to others who want to share their ideas and make an impact?
So one of the things I think that maybe really has been helpful for me, especially having the opportunity to work in sometimes the same company multiple times, is starting to keep track of what's actually causing the points of failure, what's causing the gaps, what's causing the frustrations for stakeholders, what are executives complaining the most about, because we spend a lot of time, I think lots of companies spend a lot of time doing quarterly planning and annual planning and then OKRs this and OKRs that. But how much time do we actually spend aside from a post implementation review to actually see how successful our delivery and governance are, not just independently, but together? So for me, I would make sure that I wish I did this earlier from the beginning, but um, documenting my IP as I went through the process and getting feedback. I would be looking for patterns across an organization and then, work together with other functions within an organization, create your cohorts and actually re-share knowledge and IP so that the whole organization themselves can benefit. And then I would also be and continue to do this is sharing some of those insights, advice, insights, and recommendations, or AIR, as my friend Michael likes to call it. And doing that, not to say that my way is better or I know better, absolutely not. But I can share what's worked and not worked, and being focused on sharing those so that others can benefit from them. So be vocal. Don't expect everything to be right. It's not going to be. Learn from your mistakes, and yeah, keep track of the IP you're building and start seeing the patterns across organizations and industries, because it will make your own career journey and the experience you have, whether you're building a business or a corporate career, continue to evolve and become better.
Yeah, makes sense. I guess it's sometimes easy when yourself as an independent person comes into an organization because you can see things from that external perspective and help that collaboration piece and all those sort of things come together. Yeah.
100%. And don't be afraid. Like, don't wait for permission to stand up and suggest something for the organization you're part of, or, to create a club that is about improving processes or joining something or whatever it might be. Don't like wait for permission. Create opportunities, because you'll get experience and exposure in the organizations that you're working within that will help you into your career.
Hmm. And what did inspire you to create to found the AMO, the Agile Management Office? Was it sort of that you saw, some big gaps in the organizations you worked in, and you thought, you could come up with a better way of doing it, or
I'll tell you a funny story of how it came to be really 10 years ago. So I was working in a big four bank, and we had just come off the most successful program that they had since they started tracking post implementation reviews, which was externally managed. So we knew our results were really promising, really great. After 2.5 years on this program, it was great. And then because the program was being shut down, they naturally moved many of us, including myself, into other divisions. And in the matter of weeks after this most successful, really highly praised, successful program of work, they wanted to put a lot of us into basically into a box. They wanted to demote us, and they wanted to give us pay reductions. And I just thought that doesn't make any sense. First of all, so that was the first point of reference where I felt like, as a contractor at the time, that even with all of this success and really positive outputs, they didn't want to listen. And I said to myself, not only was that unfair, but I thought, if I go away, I bet I could come back as a consultant, and they would likely pay a lot more and listen to me. And lo and behold, eventually that did happen. So that was part of the reasoning. But the real sort of problem statement I was trying to solve for, this was before agile ways of working really made mainstream. And the banks in Australia, at least, were the ones that were kind of leading the charge, spending the most money on it. And at the time, I was sitting and talking to one of the executives, and he just couldn't understand why the PMOs at the time weren't able to adapt and change the way that they were operating to suit an agile delivery mindset and framework. And it was all premature. So I thought about it, and I thought we need a management office that's more agile. And that's where the actual concept came from that one conversation. But it's evolved so much since then, and has adapted naturally over the last decade to be what it is today.
Mm, excellent. I'm sure there's a lot of these, but is there like a proud moment that you can tell us about as a leader or influencer in the project space?
You're right. After 20, nearly 22 years, there's probably a lot. And I mean, first and foremost, it's seeing, I would say, specifically seeing a number of junior staff and interns evolve and flourish in their careers, either after interning with us or working for me when I was working in corporate. By far, seeing that, it makes me really, really proud on a professional level, from a team perspective. From a business perspective, the thing that makes me the most proud is going into an organization, years later, as I have recently with one client, and seeing some of the things that my team and I put in place still being used. The terminology, frameworks, tools, processes maybe evolved and adapted a little bit. I saw that recently in one of our biggest clients, and just seeing that and hearing that, the whispers about this thing, and knowing that, I and my team helped build that, from a business perspective, makes me proud. So seeing organizations being better off after we leave and not being needed anymore because we did a good job. And then obviously, as a manager, as a leader, as a CEO, is seeing the amazing outputs that the team produces, and also where they flourish into their own careers, and seeing where they go. It makes me I feel like a proud mum. I only have a 2-year-old, but I feel like a proud mum, and I stay really well connected with most of the teams as well.
As a recruiter, I can really resonate with that. The best, the most happiest times I have are when people that I place, I can see their career has really taken off and flourished, and sometimes they'll come back to me and be like, "You got me that role that led to this, that led to that." It's sometimes they need a break and they need someone to believe in them. So I can totally resonate with that. I love that, and the fact that these clients of yours are still using your terminology and things that you input obviously means that it was successful what you did the first time when you went there, and they're still using it to date. Otherwise, if it didn't suit their needs, they wouldn't be. So that's a good testament to you. They're all the questions I have. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure as always. I wish you continued success with the AMO and your PMO influencing journey. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I'm so glad to stay connected after all these years.
Thank you. All the best. See you.